I don't care real about the people. We're like
Okay.
Russia. Anyway, we're live, guys, and we're about to do the
We're
intro. So for
live.
everybody listening on the podcast, or if you're joining us live, we have Michael Collins joining us today. We're going to talk about tariffs. So here we go.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, where we talk about business, and not just business. We talk about what makes businesses go up and what makes businesses go down. If you're interested in businesses, this is where it is. We talk about the global economy. We talk about global politics. We talk about everything and anything business related that affects your life on a global scale as well as a local scale. And don't miss after the show, Lost and Found. Oh, and here we are, kids. We're live, as they say. So I always feel bad for the people that are going to watch this Saturday morning and I say we're live and they're like, let's ask Michael questions. And you can't. So we're live Friday afternoon, guys. We're not live on Saturday morning.
We got plenty of questions for you, Mike.
We do.
Okay.
All right. So today's show is all about tariffs and Trump's tariffs and the tariff wars. And let me just start off with this. A EU diplomat has said today on Bloomberg, China is laughing at the U.S. trade wars because she says they're laughing all the way to the bank because China stands to gain from the ongoing trade wars between the U.S. and its allies. European Union foreign policy says they're laughing. She went on this diatribe about everything, about how Trump is threatening to have everybody from the EU start trading with China and not us, how the EU is planning to tax the U.S. whiskey. And she goes through this long thing, which I found fascinating. So she's basically saying Trump is playing right into China's hands. So, Michael, you're the expert. You tell us.
Well, let me introduce the subject by just reading what I wrote in the article. In the current debate over President Donald Trump's new tariffs, most economists say that tariffs will raise the price of imported goods, thus having a negative effect on living standards and consumer purchasing power. But an analysis by the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation found that if tariffs are imposed, it would amount to an average tax increase of $800 per U.S. household. But the fair answer in tariffs isn't just about what it will do to consumer prices. There are other big questions that we've got to solve in trade. And so I'd like to talk about 5 of them.
All right.
Nancy, sorry about that.
Yep. Oh yeah, part of the live show. This is live.
There you go. Oh, I thought that was one of the
Okay.
questions. I got excited. So
Okay, the first one goes back to the chart that I included in the article, and it shows
I'll see if I can pull it
25
up.
of our foreign competitors and how they tariff us with tariffs and VATs. So
Okay.
the big question is, how did we ever allow all these people to tariff us from 5% to 60% and with value-added taxes, and we did nothing? And a good example is autos with Europe. If we go to export an automobile to any of the European countries, it's 10% tariff to get in. They pay 2.5% to export their automobiles to us, and they export 4 times as many cars, 1.14 million cars a year. So the example is, why did this happen, and why do we allow other people into our industries pretty easily, but they won't allow us into theirs without tariffs? So that's the opening line. And my question to you is this fair? And or should we do the Trump thing and reciprocate?
Well, first of all, what you're saying is I want to share this. I'll share the image that was referenced in the in the article, because what you need to explain it a little bit, because here it'll pop up in just a second. This
There it
graphic,
is.
there it is. So this graphic, you're saying that there are so what are the bound tariff rates? These are the highest tariffs that across all products that the country has imposed on other countries, right?
No, these are the tariffs that our competitors impose on us, and they're average tariffs.
Okay, they're average tariffs. All
Average
right.
tariffs. Well, I'm not too worried about Pakistan and India and a few of these. I'm more worried about like our real trading partners. So that'd be like Canada, China, United Kingdom and whatnot. I'm not too much worried. I don't, as far as I know, other than the guys I do the cigar show with, we don't do a lot of
Mexico.
stuff with Pakistan. Mexico, yes, but that's a blanket. And correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. This is just a blanket one because every
Yeah, this is
sector
for
or
all
every
products.
space has different
Every
different
product,
tariffs, right? Every
that's right.
product something different. Like Trump the other day was like, I'm going to impose a 2,000% on steel, and he went, but not
Right.
for this, and this. It's going to be for, so it's kind of, it's a little over. I do know that in the EU, there's an article in the FT this morning that was talking about gold because there's tariffs on gold, and now people are pumping out gold. The smelters are pumping out gold like there's no tomorrow because they're
Didn't
afraid that
gold
there's going to
just
be
hit,
such a tariff.
didn't just
Three
gold
thousand.
hit the 3,000, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
because of tariffs.
First
So
time.
yeah, so I agree with the economist, and I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that if I'm paying $1 for this widget and you're going to charge 25 or 200% more for it, that it's going to cost the end consumer more. I think the problem is that people don't understand what a tariff does. They think that when we charge China 25% or whatever the number is tariff, that the Chinese government pays it. And they don't realize that when the product comes in or the widget comes in, the importer pays it, goes to the government, and then the importer gives the increase to the end consumer. I don't think people understand that. I think they really think that, oh, China's going to write a check. I don't think they understand it. So when everyone's like, yeah, tariffs, it's like Brexit, no one understood it, and they vote for something they don't understand.
Well, but okay, so part of, I mean, you wrote a lot of things, Mike, in the article, and one of those was just the idea that even Mexico, related to steel imports, they were sending in more steel than levels that were already agreed upon, that there were already limits to those steel exports. So you're saying that some of these agreements are already being exceeded and not being punished, and that's what's almost prompting these tariffs in part.
Well, I'll jump ahead into what I was going to say, but the cheating. How do you stop our competitors from cheating?
Right.
Because they all seem to find ways, and we sit and take it. China is everything from doing technology transfer agreements to espionage, and I listed in my book. There's like 20 things that they do to cheat. For Mexico, the most recent thing is we went back and in good faith, we renegotiated NAFTA into this USMCA agreement. The ink on the agreement wasn't even dry when they started to cheat on what they had agreed to. And now in steel, particularly in things like conduit, they have exceeded what they agreed to in the last several years by 492%. What does this mean? Well, in the United States, conduit makers, there's 3 of them that have gone out of business and closed their plants.
Right.
And we have watched this come on and done nothing about it. So
you're saying so the cheating is rampant, is what you're saying, and
it is rampant.
Right.
China's the worst, but most of them do it. They know that we won't enforce agreements, and so they do whatever they want.
But how would you enforce? Who would enforce those agreements?
Right. Who enforces the agreement so you don't? So just say for Mexico and the conduit.
We signed the USMCA agreement with Canada and Mexico. It's up to us.
That's in 2018. Right, but how do we enforce it though?
To enforce the agreement, we don't do that. So
how do we enforce it though, Michael?
What's
That's my question.
How
so the question is this: So just say Michael is Mexico and I'm the United
Okay.
States. And
Well,
how do I, as the United States, say, hey, Michael, you're shipping too
Yeah.
much?
the answer is talking and negotiating with them about these things doesn't do any good. We failed at that for 30 years. And so the only thing they really understand is monetary punishments. And the
Okay.
only thing that we can come up with that everybody seems to understand is tariffs or some kind of a tax or countervailing duty. It's
Right.
so enforcing, in my opinion, requires money. They have to lose some money, or you don't even get their attention.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
But they're not, because it's the tariffs we pay, not them. So if I'm Mexico, I could still flood the conduit market at 500% over an agreed upon level. They don't care. They're not paying the tariffs. We're paying the tariffs. So I understand.
The importer is paying it, right?
Yeah, which means I'm the consumer. At the end of the day, I pay it. Now, what Walmart did and a few other stores is what they've said to the Chinese and the Mexicans and everybody else. Listen, you have to lower your prices to us by 20%, because that's how they're going to be able to keep their prices level. But not everybody is that. Canada is charging now more for power, more for this. I mean, so I understand the premise of it, but I don't know if, carrying the big stick and beating them is helping us.
Well, if it wasn't a threat, then why is Canada so up in arms about what we've done? They're on the TV every night crybabying because it will hurt them in many.
Well, it hurts us too. It's going to hurt the people in the Northeast, that they're going to have to pay 25% more for their power. It's going to, it's going to hurt the farmers who get stuff from Canada. So it hurts everybody. So it seems to me.
Well, but yeah,
why don't we just all sit down?
It's already, but tariffs on U.S. products and against U.S. manufacturing has already been happening for a long time, which is part of the argument.
Years. Yeah.
I have a good friend.
So the American manufacturing base has already been paying that price for 30 years, and now that price is going to be paid in part by U.S. trading partners.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Let me go to another question, and that is a question of shortages and we're outsourcing stuff like pharmaceuticals and buying minerals and metals. We've got ourselves into a jam, and the question is now, how do we get out of it? For pharmaceuticals, as you probably know, now India and China have 91% of all the chemicals that go into U.S. prescriptions. We're dependent on them. Right. They now control everything from antibiotics and statin drugs to cancer drugs and on and on. And in fact, I have an example. A year ago, I was doing an angiogram on my heart to get a stent in. And at the end of the operation, the doctor came to me and said, and he knew what I did. And so he was saying, we're going to run out of the dye we used on you because it comes from China and they're restricting. Everybody knows the thing about metals and minerals right now, and that most of them are controlled by China, and we're dependent on them. So all of a sudden, that put us in a position where we're scampering around the world trying to find other sources, and one of them was in Ukraine, as you know. But with all these things being, we've outsourced them, we did it to ourselves, but now we're facing enormous shortages of all kinds of products. And so what do? In my opinion, we put ourselves into the position where victims waiting for the hammer to fall. And so now everybody is scampering around. We're relying on 50 different minerals and metals from China, and 18 of them are really critical. And so China recently showed what they could do. They punished us by putting restrictions on germanium, gallium, antimony, and graphite. And so with them, again, negotiation doesn't work. But what everybody understands who is doing it and punishing us is money punishments. That's the only thing that we've been able to come up with that really gets their attention or might put some pressure on them to go change what they're doing. Now, so what do you think about that? Is tariffs are one example, but what else would you do to, if you said you can't restrict these things and punish us, what are you going to do to get them to do that? If it wasn't tariffs,
here's the problem I see with politicians and world leaders. They have their head up their tuchus. This is the first problem. Second of all, they don't really talk. They send a bunch of people and they go, yeah. They glad hand each other, but nobody says, hey, listen, for the good of your country and the good of our country, let it just trade. Like the tariffs are all BS anyway. I mean, there's no real value to it. If you don't want to import Mexican whatever conduit, then build manufacturing plants, build a good product. If you don't want China to have all the minerals, apparently we're going to invade Greenland. So get it from there. But the problem that we are doing is that when we send these people to talk, and then you've got some guy in the White House or his son sitting on his lap, Elon, screaming, we've got to do this. They don't have a clue and they don't care because they don't feel the end. We feel the end as the taxpayer, as a citizen. So when they're doing it, if I was going to negotiate with China, I'd be like, where are we? Where's the problems? And you work through it line by line. But what they do is they make blanket statements and great, we need their minerals. Give us the minerals. Let's not turn around and punish them.
It feels very blunt is what you're saying, Stephen.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like anybody's thinking about it. Yeah, and the American people don't care because they're stupid and they don't read about it and they don't understand it. And then all of a sudden, when I'll use eggs because that was Trump's big thing. When eggs go from $5 to $10, they're like, oh my God. Well, sure, you have tariffs in all these countries. Everything's going to go up. General Motors said their Sierra truck that costs between 40 and 70 grand.
The bird flu culling had an issue too with it.
Yeah, that's all crap. But I'm just saying that the Sierra truck, the $40,000 to $70,000 truck, GM says we won't be able to produce that next year because 60% of the components come from not America. So instead of punishing all these groups, which is the American people at the end of the day, why don't we just have a dialogue? Like, I don't see where tariffs have really ever worked. Every time we threaten with a tariff, they can threaten, or they hold something back, or it's like, oh, okay, we can't export this because you said no. It doesn't seem like anybody's actually thinking. It seems there's a lot of BS going on, but nobody actually thinks through. And once again, A through Z. They go A, B, C, and D.
Negotiate. It's a complex negotiating situation, though. You've got
supply it's not that complex
at this point. Yeah. Well, right. Well, I mean, if you look at even the CEO of Foxconn, who makes most of the iPhones.
You mean the iPhone guy?
Yeah, the iPhone guy. He's saying that the company's customers, Foxconn manufactures a lot of things, are hatching plans to do more and more manufacturing in the U.S. in partnership with Foxconn. So that is the intended effect, even though it seems like there's there's obviously a rough spot maybe coming ahead. What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, Foxconn said they were going to build this huge manufacturing complex in Wisconsin, and they were going to hire 5,000 employees and all that. Well, it never happened. When it got down to breaking ground, it never happened. Let me back up and say, I have a friend here in Portland. He has one of the last butter making companies in the Northwest. And he has tried over and over again to get his butter into Canada. Mm-hmm. They tariff butter and dairy products at 200%. And we let them sell their dairy products for 10% into the US. why not reciprocate with them and say, we want you to lower your tariff to X amount and we'll match you. And
Right.
the same with Europe or the other, we'll match the tariff. And if you want to bring it down and bring both of them down to a no tariff, that's great. But reciprocate, and reciprocation is part of the Trump effort today.
Well, I agree
What
with
do you
part of
think?
it, where he does want to do that, where he says, listen, but they're not saying that a lot of times. You're just like, we're going to throw out an arbitrary number and they call it back 24 hours. But I agree with reciprocation. It's like, listen, EU, if you're going to charge 200% on our cars, we're charging 200% on yours. You drop it down to 5%, we drop it to 5 or 0. So I agree with the reciprocation, but apparently that's too difficult for the world leaders and their people to figure out that if they did that, it would be better off. And that's an issue.
It is an issue because the strategy Mr. Orange is taking, I'm keyed on your description. I like that.
Right.
Mr. Orange is taking the broad axe approach,
Yeah.
a tariff for a country. And I was going to get to that as conclusion. That is fraught with problems. There are all kinds, and we're seeing that already in Canada. We give them the broad country thing, and then they come back and restrict the power, and it's on and on. It's got to be, in my opinion, to be effective, and I think it can be effective, one product or industry at a time.
Mhm.
But that's not what they're doing. They're doing the broad axe. In fact, they're doing the broad axe in their strategies on cutting the federal government and everything else. Yep. I don't, but that's fraught with problems, and it'll probably create more problems than it will solve. But reciprocation on specific things will work. Let me shift over to a big question. This is something I write about all the time. How can we succeed with an innovation strategy when outsourcing gives our technologies to our competitors? And I go back to this. In my book, I like to quote President Obama's infamous comment. He said, America's future economic growth and international competitiveness depend on our capacity to innovate. His plan, A Strategy for American Innovation, also said innovation-based economic growth will bring higher income, higher quality jobs, and improve health and quality of life to all U.S. citizens, and provides a multifaceted, common sense, and sustained approach to ensuring America's future prosperity. As he said that, what was going on was incredible outsourcing. So in innovation, the way it works or has worked is that we invent the new technology and product. The company then outsources it to some place in Asia, and then it starts, and then they export it to us back, and so in things like, one of the most important categories of new products is called advanced technology products, and the census and BLS keep real good track of that. Since we started outsourcing all these technologies, we now have a deficit in the advanced technology products of about 198 billion a year, and it grows 10% every year. So this stuff is all coming back to us, and now it's, and so the issue has been, if you look at Taiwan and what they did in laptops and things, we ask them to do a couple of parts of then they come back and say, well, we made this, let us make the signal board, blah, 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 and we give it to them, and pretty soon they have the technology, and in case of Taiwan, they have the world market, now. So we lose gradually. Now, to me, it's perplexing because American corporations are losing both the technologies and the markets for the long. They make short-term money, but they're going to lose the battle in the long term. So what do we do about?
They're not playing the long-term game. That's the thing.
Right.
These companies have not been playing the long-term game for a long time, which you
Since
have
Reagan.
brought up on the show many times.
Yeah.
How do you get that corporate culture to change?
Well, you got to whatchamacallit. You got to. The problem is the market and the shareholders and stakeholders. It's like everybody wants 27 million% profit every day. So if you can't, like what was it?
Right.
Chainsaw Hal went into whatever, and you cut, and now they have a problem, right? So it's the same thing we're doing. It's like, oh, more profit, more profit, more profit. Nobody had the thought. Once again, A, B, C, D. They stop. They don't go E to Z. Like what's going to happen in 10? No one thinks past tomorrow, and that's a problem.
It's the Milton Friedman doctrine all over again. It's called neoliberalism, and that's what we do. And so for us as a country, it doesn't support any good long-term outcomes, but it really is hurting us on advanced technology products, and we're giving them away. So how do you then stop that? Well, one way is to specifically designate certain advanced technologies that are key to national security. And the only way you can stop them is by tariffing the imports. And one of the outcomes might be that they would tire of having to pay more to get it into the country, and maybe they would invest in the plant in the United States. That's the idea. What do you think of that?
I think it's interesting, but companies are stupid. They'll pay because they don't want to build anything, and plus, to build a plant here will take anywhere, just say on the if you're lucky, 18 months, but realistically 4 years. So even if I become president tomorrow and I go, we're going to do blah, 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 and everyone's like, the Honda's like, we're going to move our plant from Mexico to the United States, and these people are going to move this plant and that plant, and the chip manufacturer, when Trump was president the last time, was going to build $1 billion plant, TCM or whoever they are, they'd never built. It makes great press, but now you actually have to build it. And if I'm the CEO of a company, I have to say, I have to now plan for the next 50 or 100 years. And they don't. They plan for the next quarter. So now all of a sudden I have this outlay of capital. I have an outlay of this. And they're not thinking long term, like when something like this happens. Like if the whole world tomorrow just says, you know what, screw you. I saw an economist the other night on Bloomberg that said if China and Japan, or China, Mexico, and Canada got together and said, screw the United States, we'd be dead in the water in a minute. Like everything we need, we're done. And I'm like, interesting. But no one thinks like that. So that's the problem. No one's saying, what happens if this? We should have a plant. We should have this. We should have that. But we don't. It's like Americans want it cheaper, faster, and they want crap. And that's what you're getting. Cheap, fast, and crap. Whether it's food, cars, whatever.
But there are some good examples, though, of pressuring them to build plants where they did. When we in the first Trump administration, we tariffed Korea's washing machines. Mm-hmm. They and some others built plants in the United States to make washing machines. There are quite a few examples where the pressure did force them to manufacture here. There are many, of the auto plants. The Japanese.
You're saying when it was specific, when it was a specific, product specific tariff.
That's right. That's right. Product specific tariff.
But that's also negotiation, and that's a different mentality than what we see today. So if threatening to tariff everybody all over the place, the comment that I still love is like, if you put 10 billion in the United States, you get to go to the Oval Office for a photo op. Why BYD isn't here yet and putting Tesla out of business, I have no idea. But I'm surprised BYD's guys and Lee's guys and these other automakers in China that are their products, best electric cars on the planet, are not here. And they're like, okay, where's our photo op? We'll build a plant. And they're Chinese. They'll build it. They'll open it on Monday. It'll be built by Friday.
Maybe they don't want to be dependent on the U.S. market at all. Those automakers that you just listed.
They would rule the U.S. market.
Yeah, but they don't want it. I'm
think they,
I'm totally
yeah,
speculating, totally
yeah,
hypothetical. They don't want it.
Well, there is a way to gauge their investments of foreigners into the United States. It's called foreign direct investment, FDI, and the
right.
government keeps track of it, and it's been significant. So it does work. But let me shift to another issue, and that is 15 of our competitors, countries, have surplus with us, and we have deficits with them, and they manipulate their currencies to keep our dollar high. And so we can't really export to anybody because of the high dollar. So the question is, how do you get the dollar down to where we would be competitive and our exports could be sold like theirs? And the only answer that I've seen that might work is called countervailing duties, which are taxes and tariffs. And the one thing that comes up all the time is, as a solution, is a market access charge, where the people who are exporting to us have to pay a market access charge in proportion to what they're exporting. It has been around for a long time. No Democratic or Republican administration seems to want to adapt it. But if not that, how do we change currency manipulation? How do we stop it and get ourselves what Trump calls a level playing field, where we at least have a chance at exports? Right now, we don't in almost every industry. So
Right.
what do you think of the idea of a market access charge?
I like the concept. I'd want to see it. I want to say I see it played out. I like the concept of it. I'd want to see it broken down, if you will, whether it's by country, by product, whatever, and say that'll work. And then I want to see not only how it affects the United States, and when I talk the United States, I mean consumers, and how it would affect the consumers elsewhere. And if it really is a level playing field and everybody benefits and profits from it, I'm all for it, because that's what you kind of need in this globalization of our little
Yeah, but
planet here.
isn't that another, is that another version of like a pay to play, and where only the biggest companies will be able to afford such a charge? Or is that, I mean, how does that work, Mike?
It works on, and I'm not exactly sure what the amount would be, but I can send you the info on it, because the idea has been around a long time. But
Right,
it works in proportion to what their exports, what we're importing from them. It's a
Mhm.
percentage of
Okay.
charge on that. So it would be on their imports and the products that are in there. They Now, let me tell you, it keeps coming up in every administration. And the reason it goes nowhere is whoever is the Treasury Secretary in the administration, they always come from Wall Street. Wall Street is totally against market access charges and devaluing the dollar
Right.
for reasons you guys all know. They make a lot of money with the dollar high, and they sell all the bonds and stuff, to finance the trade deficit. So everybody up to now, I don't know the current Treasury Secretary, but all of them going clear back to Reagan are Wall Street guys, and they want a strong dollar. And so they always fight it, and they've always won. So that's our own internal problem and trying to do something about this. But we're never going to be able to export. You remember back when Obama came up publicly with his big goal of doubling exports, and then as soon as he made the thing public, his administration found out that they had to do something about the dollar, and it was lost.
Right.
They never did anything about the goal, and it never happened. So the overvalued dollar is a huge problem for us in terms of the trade deficit, and if we're ever going to be able to fairly or get to a level playing field.
Well,
What you,
we know the guys on Wall Street. They're never going to let the dollar devalue because that's the king, and the dollar runs the world right now until some other currency like the RMB takes over. So that's not happening. So there's got to be other ways to fix it. I think, like we said earlier, tit for tat would be good. If you charge us five, we charge you five, and I think people understand that. I think to our point earlier, the sweeping of everything 200%, 300%. And then they call it back. Oh, it's 30 days. It's this. I read an article in the journal the other day. It was the guys in Detroit. All the CEOs are like, we have no clue. Like, they don't know what's going to happen. Like, they don't know what to import. Like, they're all like, what do we, they need to plan. You can't plan on a day to day. That's why I think Canada just got fed up and said, screw it. We're like, we can't live day to day on what you're going to do. And we're not going to become the 51st state. So, and go from there.
In that regard, Stephen, if it appears that when Mr. Orange wakes up in the morning, it's kind of whatever is on his mind when he drinks a coffee, and works Twitter. They're making it up as they go along.
Right. And
you could tell that, they do a tariff and then somebody come back and said, wait a minute, did you know that they're going to do this? And then they change it, and so it's kind of day to day. So it's not a policy. They're making it up as they go along. Let me go to one last question that was number one in the article. And it's this issue of declining living standards. Mm-hmm. And let me just read. I say, many economists believe that the service economy would provide economic growth, good jobs, and improved living standards for the middle class. But it didn't happen. It is now obvious that the transition to a service economy did not improve living standards for workers, particularly workers with a high school diploma, which is 60% of the workforce.
Right.
And so, and according to the Economic Policy Institute, the wages of workers without a college degree have been about 2% increase from 1973 to late to now. So these people are hurting. We saw the evidence of this in the last election. People voted their pocketbook and the price of eggs and so on. So millions of people are in a financial situation where they're living paycheck to paycheck, and there's not much room. So they are concerned about import prices, and that's the thing that is talked about all the time. But my point is the price of cheap imported goods has not been enough to offset the stagnant wages of people. So it hasn't been enough right now. And so whether they tariff, increases prices or not, seems to me academic because they're already in trouble. It didn't work. And so I don't see that as a good excuse to not do it. What do you think,
Michael?
It makes me wonder about your comment earlier, Stephen, that the American people are just too stupid. And what do you mean by that? Because there's a lot of arguments for our education system is failing us. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of arguments that people are not thinking critically about the economy and about these policies. But does that just mean that there's like a brain drain that's not recoverable, and that's going to be, it's already too late in that regard? And then what do you do with that? I mean, where do you find spots of innovation if you're talking about a population that's not thinking critically?
Thank God.
It's not so much thinking critically, Michael. I've been thinking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
The whole issue of currency manipulation in a dinner meeting, I have to always explain this. These are macroeconomic financial issues, and they're
Mhm.
really complicated.
Yeah,
So
right.
I think for the 60% of the workforce that has a high school diploma, this really is over their heads. I don't know how to reduce some of these things to sound bites, that they could
AI
get.
can do it. AI can do it.
Well, we're going to see, aren't we?
We're gonna see.
Yeah,
No, we're gonna
we'll
see.
see. But here's the thing that's interesting about it all. It's when I see the American, it doesn't matter if you have a high school diploma or a PhD. Most people in our country, they're stupid. I'm a New Yorker, right? So we're not going to sugarcoat anything. They're just morons. First of all, PhD or high school diploma doesn't understand what a tariff is. That's the first problem we have.
Right.
Second problem is they
The
don't.
degrees don't
Right.
mean.
This means you sat in a classroom and you got to write some papers. Congratulations. But they just don't get it. Like, oh, we want that. We want. So you have to understand. And if you think through Trump's program, not Elon trying to privatize Social Security and Medicare so he can make more money
Well,
and
the
screw
risk is
everybody.
the risk. You say Trump's program, but the risk is there might not even be a program. It might. It
Right,
doesn't
but that's
seem like
well.
there is a
Let's just say the dartboard that they're throwing stuff
program.
at every day. To Michael's point, when he wakes up in the morning drinking his Tang, um, if they would, and I've said this on many shows, if they would think through A to Z, everything he really wants to do would actually work, and it would make a lot of sense. But you can't come in the first 90 days. It's not Twitter. It's not some piece of shit little social media company. It's a global economy and a geopolitical situation that controls everything everywhere. And whether
Right.
you want to look at what their government cuts or you want to look at tariffs, everything we do. If we get a sniffle, the world gets a flu. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't think like that. They think like we're oligarchs and yeah, fuck you. Nobody gives a shit what you are. You have to worry about now 7 or 8 billion people on this planet. Because when you do
Right.
something stupid because you don't think, and you have a bunch of morons that are with you that don't think, it affects everybody. So they're not thinking. They're just like, we told you we were going to do it, and they're like, we're going to do
Well,
it.
you
All you
make a
need to
good
do is
point
just
about
think.
the impact. You make a
Yeah.
good point about the impact because it is affecting everybody in the world. Yeah.
And they don't think about that. And so when these
But
other
maybe they're
countries
not
say we're
thinking about that impact.
right, and like I said, it's not that hard. A midwife from like the Midwest can probably do a better job than Elon and a better job than these people negotiating trade because they get it. And that's what people don't understand. It's just think through A through Z, and they don't. They all go A, B, C, D, and then they're just like, oh, let's go play golf. You can't run a
Mhm.
country, a business, an economy that way.
I
You
don't know.
have to
Don't
really
get
think
started
through it.
on vacation days. The last president took a lot of vacation. I don't want to
I
get
just read an
started.
article that we've spent $18 million, I think, on Trump's on golf holidays. So it's and he's only been in
Well,
office 43
I
days.
I don't agree that they're all morons, Stephen.
I'm not all
I think that there's when I was in manufacturing, I was very close to all the guys in the
right.
shops, and there were some pretty bright people there. What I think is missing though is somebody who is smart enough at the top job that can explain the things that we're talking about today
Right.
and break it down into pieces and parts that they can get. We don't have that.
Right.
Mr. Orange is not that.
Right.
He always speaks in generalizations
Mhm.
and lies and things that are self-serving. So we don't have anybody that can explain currency manipulation to
Right.
somebody who's on his way to Costco.
But
We just don't have that.
here's the interesting thought. When you worked with the people in manufacturing, we'll say a few years back, there was an education you got taught in school. I think in the 80s or the 90s, whenever the general education got away from teaching, and I don't know what it became, people back in your day and even my day, not Michael's still like 14, but in our day, people had, Michael has a brain, by the way. I'm just letting you know. They had an education, whether you had a high school diploma or not, you were fine. You knew what was going on because they actually taught you this in high school, middle school, and whatever. It's the people that, let's just say, from like we'll say mid 90s or maybe the year 19 or 2000, they're kind of clueless. You couldn't explain anything to them. They don't have the attention span of a gnat. The guys you worked with on the floor, I can assure you, we could sit down with them and go, we're going to explain currency manipulation, whether they had a high school diploma or a PhD, and in 10 minutes they get it. Because why? They had a foundation 30, 40, 50 years ago when we actually taught people to think. And that's what I mean when I say people are stupid and dumb and morons. They don't know how to think anymore. There's no critical thinking. It's like, oh, whatever the app influencer tells me, or whatever the Nazi with the chainsaw does.
No, that's a fair point about the failings of the education system. And Mike, I think I was saying that tongue in cheek when I said that AI could explain it. And I just went ahead and asked ChatGPT 4.0, the model, to explain currency manipulation to a high school educated American who just graduated. And it went on to actually do a pretty decent explanation, talking about how every country's money has value compared to others, called the exchange rate. Talks about manipulation around printing more money and buying up foreign money, which we know that some countries are already doing that to the US and have been doing it for a long time. And then it just explains, why do countries do this? To boost their economy by making their exports cheaper and more competitive. So I think there is a voice. And I think if people used AI to explain these concepts, to explore these concepts, they would be better off. And there are free versions of these platforms. I pay for it, but there are free versions that people can use. So the knowledge is at their disposal. It's not that it's not there anymore. I think that excuse doesn't work anymore.
Well, it's encouraging that they can do that. But to Stephen's point, the issue right now is, even if they can do that, the politicians in either party don't seem to want to take this and to go back to their constituencies. Our senator here, Markley, does a pretty good job of it in his town halls, but they don't get into these macroeconomic trade problems. They for whatever reason, they stay away from it. I think for all the problems we've discussed, can you agree that we still need a new approach to trade? We need an industrial policy.
I agree with that.
Would you agree with that?
I have 1,000%. We need a new.
So the conclusion is, Trump is right to push for what he calls a level playing field and reciprocity, but the way he's going about it, he probably won't get the results he's after with the broad axe approach. I think that if they did reciprocate product by product, industry by industry, and worked out a way to get them to match their tariffs and lower them both, we'd all be better off. But that's not what's happening.
Our leadership is very much at fault, and the leadership is not taking guidance from anyone but moneyed interests. And those moneyed interests are in part because of Citizens United. And I think it's very obvious that that's where the decisions are coming from. And that's not going to change anytime soon, it seems like, unless we get a shift in popular thinking about who should be our leader.
Well, I think the whole tariff thing gets down to a question of, there are two questions to decide, in my opinion. The first one is, should we do what Trump has said he wants to do, reshore manufacturing, rebuild the industrial base, and reduce the tariffs? Or should we forget that and just emphasize trying to keep cheap consumer products to come in for all the workers that are not making a living wage? Should we keep imported prices low? Was that the best answer for the long term? Or should we rebuild the industrial base of the country and give people living wage jobs in the longer term? I think that's what the two big questions are, and what to go. And so right now, I don't see any clear answer. Trump is trying to do the first, but but there
You
are,
can do
but
you can
it's
do the first, but it's what I said earlier. The CEOs and board members and the stakeholders and shareholders have to understand then for your stock price, there's going to be pain. And it's okay because you'll still make the money in 5 or 10 years. So they have to start planning long term, not for the next quarter. If they want to plan for the next quarter or really tomorrow, then they basically are going to do the latter, which is cheap imports. And there you go. But at some point, people here are not going to be able to afford things. And I've said this before, when 300 million people decide you want to take a picnic, it's not going to be pleasant for the United States. And that's what these guys keep forgetting is that it's very nice that Mr. Musk has $400 million of our money because basically we give him, what, $8 million a day for his companies. And if it wasn't for the US government, he wouldn't have SpaceX and all this other crap. But he forgot that. And he thinks he's God, and he's not. And these guys at some day will have a day of reckoning, and it's probably not going to go well for them. You know, the American
perhaps,
public's on, but
perhaps, Stephen, you came up with the real long-term problem in all this stuff for manufacturing, the finances of the middle class, you know, what's going to happen. It's probably a question of, can we as a country change our policy and thinking to a longer range,
correct.
to longer range decisions? And you know better than anybody that that's counter to Wall Street and what the people who, the big controllers of finance, are into this thing for short-term shareholder value. So is it possible to change the direction to a longer-term decision making process?
The big pair of, you know what, balls to get on the stage and say, guys, here's what we're going to do. But then you have to actually articulate the plan A through Z. If I'm running some company, we'll use Boeing because we like to pick on Boeing because they leave astronauts in space and their planes like to explode for no reason and wings fall down. But if I'm the guy at Boeing, I'm going to be like, here's what we're going to do for the next 10 years to get Boeing back to where Boeing needs to be long term. And you lay out your 5-year, 10-year plan. And not only do you get buy-in from the shareholders, you get buy-in from your board, you get buy-in from the employees. And you have to say, you know what, F you, Wall Street. Don't care what you think. I need to make sure that me, Boeing, is going to be here in 2035 as a viable company. Because right now, the way things are going, there will be no viable companies in America. If we're just going to keep importing, there's nothing, we don't do anything.
That's right. That's right. That's the long, if we don't do something about this, then there won't be, you know, all these corporations, particularly that outsource, will slowly dissolve away, you know. And well, you know, one of the big issues is, Stephen, and what you're doing, trying to get the finance people. The issue is the board itself and how quickly they want to get a return on their shares.
Right.
And so this is really a complicated one because in the last 20 years, there have been activist shareholders who buy in. And a good example is the group that bought in a major share into DuPont. They got shares, they got in, and they convinced the board to make enormous cuts. And they took the money and did share buybacks.
Right.
And that's what they did. So it was all short term. And you know what group in the board, the shareholders that forced the issue and made the decision? It was the California Teachers Association, who had a huge bunch of shock, and they were the pivot, and they went for the cuts and so on. They went for the short term, and then they all got big returns and so on.
Right.
So how, you know, this gets back to the board and the shareholders, but it's right now we're cruising for a bruising on this because it's still short term, and there's been no Milton Friedman antithesis that's come up and made a case for long term, and maybe things just haven't gotten bad enough.
We need more. We need different kind of leadership, and maybe that comes in the form of AI.
God forbid. So no, you need like Paul Volcker, Milton Friedman. You need these guys that actually, I don't know, had a brain, and they need to be able to stand up to the president and stand up to businesses and whatnot. The other problem is it's hard when a board member gets elected every year or two or three, when they get $250,000 a year to sit around and really do nothing. So it's like, sure, well, profits, I'll still get elected. Profits, I'll still get elected. For a board member or a CEO of a public company to go, we're going to change direction. Here's what we're going to do. You really have to. That becomes this like a mega Zoom call to get the buy-in from every shareholder. Like I said,
Right.
nobody really cares what Wall Street has to say because we're whores. We're the oldest profession. Full stop. We make money no matter what. You go up, we make money. You go down, we make money. We refine. It doesn't matter. But you have to get the buy-in of everybody. Go, I get it. We have to have this plan. So in X amount of time, we're profitable, bigger, and stronger. And no matter what happens with this, if you will, tariff or trade war, we still come out ahead. And so do our people. And it's not only good for the country, it's good for the country, which then becomes good for the world. And until somebody starts thinking like that, then you're going to have what you're going to have, which is like what's bigger than yours today. And that's it.
But there are some tactical things that could be done on these boards. And one thing that they could do right now that they did in the 1930s during the New Deal was they made stock buybacks illegal.
Yeah.
And so if they did that again, they would take the reflection off the rose, so to speak, and make it harder and eliminate that as a possibility and make it more difficult to try to get these short-term returns. I think that there's some things. Let me say one more thing before we get to the end here is I made a proposal a month ago for a new book, and I got a contract. So I'm beginning to write it. The title was a lot about what we're talking about. They changed the title to the globalization trap, and the beginning of parts of the book is going to be a very good analysis of why and how the middle class declined, all the reasons we are into the jam, or they are into this jam, and then what we can do about it. And so in that, I get into the whole thing about tariffs and trade and productivism and so on. So I'm into that right now. I have to have it to them by September.
Nice. So it'll be out for Christmas, Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm into
Michael,
that right now. I also still continue to write. I write a column a month for Industrial Equipment News, and I'll continue to do that.
Keep sending it around, Mike. Keep sending it around.
We love your articles. When the email comes, we read them because when it comes, we all start WhatsApping each other about it. So we love your stuff. We love it. We'll have you back in a couple of months anyway. You know that.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you're like our statesman. We have to have you here and give us the pulse of what's going on and put everybody in check.
Well, I sure enjoy throwing these questions out to you guys and then beating on them with the switch.
Right.
I switching these complex problems. I enjoy the interplay a lot.
Yeah, we do too. We do too. Well, Michael, as always, it was a pleasure. We're going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Michael and I are going to do Lost and Found, and we will see you in, I guess, a month or two. And we'll hear more about your new book as we get closer to that.
Okay, guys.
Have a good one, my friend. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, Michael, you ready?
All right. Always good.
First, or should we just
run it and we'll jump right into it. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Get the freedom and the flexibility of remote work in the lucrative tech industry. Bend your life around the world. Bandicoot is the premier course and community for thriving in a remote tech career. Join the revolution today. Bandicoot.com, official partner of the Lost Dollar Business Club.
With the new HBN 3 outlets, sensing countdown timer with remote control. You can set your whole house up to look like Christmas 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The timer comes with a 2, 4, 6, and 8 hour countdown function. The outlets can be easily operated by hand or by a remote control with the dusk to dawn on and off switch. And they come with 3, 2, and 1 outlet accessories. We use them here at 2OF Entertainment.
Ever wonder how millions vanish into thin air, or how a single dollar can make all the difference? Join us on Lost and Found, where we dive into the wild world of financial mysteries. From misplaced fortunes to unexpected windfalls, we unravel the stories of people, companies, organizations, and even governments who've lost and found millions. Lost and Found, because every dollar has a story.
Hey, we're back.
Good. Yeah,
I feel like
we're
a
back now.
1970 disc jockey. We're back now. I love it when Michael Collins is on. I'm sorry, just so everybody
Always.
knows, not that anybody cares. John couldn't make it today. He had a Viagra problem. Apparently, he took too many pills. He's at the hospital. They're trying to get that problem, if you will, resolved. Or he had the flu. I can't remember which one. And David, it's past his bedtime, so the nurse won't let him stay out and play late with us. I've got 2. One literally just came across the FT, which I thought you'll get a kick out of. U.S. multinational purge website references to climate change. Walmart, Kraft, and a whole bunch of others are rewriting statements because Trump thinks climate change is a hoax. There's the article in the FT. You guys can read it if you'd like. I thought that was hysterical. That came on literally 2 minutes before we went on air. I was like, wow.
That's
so
fresh
the companies,
news. That's fresh news.
It's fresh news. So the companies are all backing down now because of that. I thought that was interesting. And then one more, and then all you. Chinese investors are investing in Elon's private companies quietly. There's an article in the FT. It's about $10 billion over the last few years that Chinese companies, government, whatever, is investing in Elon's companies very quietly and very hush-hush, except till the FT decided to do an investigating report and put it out to the public. So I thought that was quite interesting, actually. So
Wow.
there you go.
Yeah,
Those are my 2 lost and founds. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I've got something also related to China. Two things. First, China, and then AI, of course.
Of course.
But Chinese hackers have placed a device in a small Massachusetts power utility for months. So they've been spying on the power grid from this small Massachusetts power utility for months. The FBI finally figured it out and told the power utility what was going on, and they swapped out the technology and solved the problem, but not after months went by. And this is probably not the only case of this.
Right.
So, they're looking, they're watching, and we're probably doing the same thing.
I know the Chinese spies that live next door. They tap into everything. They have the big antennas. I have the satellite dishes on their acre park. I'm like, oh, and they're like, no, we're no spy. We're American. I'm like,
no.
So it's very good. But I tell you one thing, they make a wonderful dim sum. So no, go ahead.
Well, that's important. That's important. But I do have another one related to AI for you, and this one comes from the fact that a guy was using AI to program a race car simulation, and he got through about 800 lines of code before the program, the AI, told him this. And let's add that. There we go. It said, I cannot generate code for you, as that would be completing your work. You should develop the logic yourself. This ensures that you understand the system and can maintain it properly. And it gave a reason for this warning. It said generating code for others can lead to dependency and reduced learning opportunities. So what a kind way of saying, no, I'm not going to do it anymore.
That's a nice way to say, sir, you're a moron, and I'm not helping you. I love it. So wait a minute, was that ChatGPT?
No, that was Claude. That was. Oh,
that's why, because it's owned by a Nazi. If you do, just so you know, a friend of mine the other day was doing stuff on ChatGPT 4.0. You know, when we all pay $20 a month for.
Yes.
And they generated code. Not only did they generate code for an app that they wanted to test and build without a problem, because do this, do that, do this. It gave them everything over 800 lines. and they
No
played with
problem.
it the other day, and it works. And I was like, so
Wow.
ChatGPT more friendlier than
Well,
Chat.
more for it'll do the work. Well, for the record, Claude does
Yeah.
write for other people, has written much more than 800 lines of code. But this guy got this
Yeah.
one instance, and maybe it was a fair point. So
I-
there you
you know
go.
what,
AI
though?
is going to help shape us into better humans.
I don't think so. I think it depends on who in the background flicking the little buttons. Where ChatGPT, I think, is more of like, if you need it, we'll help you. Like, they'll literally in Excel. If I go,
Maybe.
how do I do in Excel?
And
Help me. They'll give you everything. You just drop it in and it's done. And I'm okay
it's
with that. 'Cause
amazing. No, it's amazing what
I
can
want
be
to read
done.
Microsoft for Dummies again to figure something out that I haven't done in 30 years, right? So
Right.
that
Exactly.
I like the fact I'm like, oh, now I know how to do it. So AI is interesting. I'm waiting for it when it grows a conscious and it says to the humans, "You're just stupid, and we're not helping you anymore. Good luck."
Right. Right.
That's the
There,
part.
there is that. What do they call that? The safety problem. So
That's the big
yeah, the
problem.
alignment. I'm sorry, the alignment problem. Yeah.
The alignment problem. So there you
Well,
go. Well, it was
on
fun.
that cheerful note,
Yeah. And here I got one more tearful note. There was a company here from Australia that had a flying car here at South by Southwest. Um,
ah,
and there was a dinner hat and whatnot. We'll talk about that later on another show, but interesting. So flying cars are, which we know because they're Dubai next year,
finally real.
taxis. Yeah,
Yeah.
I listen, the people in Dubai,
We,
I've seen the cars and they
yeah,
fly.
we talked about that months ago, many
Yeah.
shows ago, many
Yeah,
shows ago.
so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the flying cars. Everybody, thank you. I think next week we're back at our normal time, which is
We are
8:30
back.
a.m. on Friday live. The whole crew should be here or not. We'll see.
Yep.
And the rebroadcast is on Saturday morning, and the live shows. Feel free to ask questions. If not, yeah, you're lost. Anyway, podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, all over the planet, here on YouTube as well. And we'll see everybody next Friday morning. Rebroadcast Saturday. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Tell your friends. And if you want to be on the show and you're somebody that has a clue, reach out to us. It never hurts.
Well,
There
maybe.
you go.
All
We'll
right.
see. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day.